Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Clayton Graham, and I'm chairperson of the Dr. Martin Luther King Indiana Holiday Commission. To the Office of the Governor, members of the General Assembly, justices of the Supreme Court, other elected and appointed officials, honored guests, and friends. Welcome to the 13th Annual Statewide Day of Remembrance. I want to thank our sponsors, the Indiana Civil Rights Commission and the Indianapolis Jewish Community Relations Council, for working collectively in organizing today's program. I want to thank members of the Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. Indiana Holiday Commission for your support and dedication. Would you please stand and be recognized? I also would like to take a moment to remember Commissioner Beatrice Moten Foster, who recently passed away. Commissioner Moten Foster was a strong community activist and Indiana Holiday Commissioner for many years. Would you please take a moment of silence to remember her, since she just recently passed away? Thank you. Additionally, I want to thank the staff of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission. Without their hard work, this program would not be possible. Would you please stand and be recognized? Finally, I want to thank more than 300 students who have joined us here today from throughout the state, beginning at 9:30 a.m. for the Holocaust Youth Summit. Thank you for being a part of this event and commemorating the victims of the Holocaust.
Well, good afternoon. Good afternoon. All right. Thank you. First of all, thanks Commissioner Graham and the MLK Commission for you guys making this possible, and we certainly appreciate the ground that you guys stand on and allowing this event to happen. Just I think an important note to mention, I would like to bring everyone's attention to the photo gallery that is in the opposite atrium, which is the south atrium. And after this event is over, I ask that everyone take an opportunity to go by and see all of the photos that we have there posted in the atrium. So please take a moment to do that as well. Again, my name is Jamal Smith. I'm the Executive Director of the Indiana Civil Rights Commission, and quite pleased and honored to be in front of so many young people today. I'm not sure if we have any elected or appointed officials with us, but if we do, certainly welcome, and thank you for being here this afternoon as well. And welcome all those who are just sincerely and genuinely interested in commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. The tragedy and hardships endured are too much to imagine, and it's important to remember that the Holocaust is not just a Jewish tragedy, but a universal human tragedy. I hope today's program will empower you to join the fight for human rights by commemorating the victims of the Holocaust. And without any further ado, at this time, I'd like to introduce our keynote speaker for this afternoon. Dr. Pierre Atlas is the director of the Richard Lugar Center for Global Studies and is an associate professor of political science at Marian University. He writes monthly opinion columns for the Indianapolis Star and RealClearPolitics.com. He has presented conference papers, written articles, and co-authored a book chapter on Israeli politics and Israeli-Palestinian conflict. He has also conducted research on civil wars in comparative perspective, and is co-author of a journal article on civil war in Sudan, Zimbabwe, Chad, and Lebanon. He has written several entries for the Encyclopedia of the Modern Middle East and North Africa, and will have an entry in the forthcoming Encyclopedia of Israeli-Palestinian Conflict. In recent years, he has traveled to Israel, Jordan, Cuba, Turkey, and China. Dr. Atlas earned his PhD in political science from Rutgers University, specializing in the Middle East. He also holds a master's and bachelor's degree in political science from the University of Arizona and the University of Toronto, respectively. Ladies and gentlemen, without any further ado, Dr. Pierre Atlas.
Good afternoon. Thank you for coming and for waiting for us to begin. The Holocaust was a unique event, unprecedented and unsurpassed in human history. Approximately 6 million Jews, including 1.5 million Jewish children under the age of 18, were systematically rounded up and murdered by the Nazis and their enthusiastic collaborators throughout Europe, occupied by the Nazis. They were targeted and killed because of their religious and ethnic identity, with the goal of exterminating the Jewish people in their entirety from the European continent and beyond. The Holocaust did not emerge in a vacuum. Anti-Semitism, or Jew hatred, is called the world's oldest hatred. Jew hatred was rooted in early Christian theology, with the false charges that the Jews killed Christ and the Passover blood libel. Jews had been targeted for extreme violence for centuries prior to the Nazi Holocaust. In medieval Europe, passion plays fueled the looting, raping, and killing of Jews at Easter, not just in Russia and Eastern Europe, but in England and Western Europe as well. In the 19th century, the term anti-Semitism was coined by a German racial theorist who wanted to develop a modern and secular rationale and justification for Jew hatred, one that did not rely on old-fashioned Christian theology. It was a time when pseudo-scientific racial theories were being promulgated, dividing the world into a hierarchy of races, with Jews defined not just as inferior, but as a dangerous parasitic race that threatened the purity of the superior white Northern European races. Adolf Hitler tapped into this long-standing, pre-existing Jew hatred, both religious and secular-based. Centuries of demonization of the Jews made Hitler's anti-Semitic agenda palatable to millions upon millions of Germans and other Europeans. The ultimate result was the Holocaust, which we remember and commemorate today. Non-Jews were also rounded up and murdered by the Nazis, including gypsies, Jehovah's Witnesses, homosexuals, and Slavs. But the primary target and the very reason for the Holocaust was the Jews. The crimes of the Nazis were so horrific that a new term needed to be invented to describe them. That term was genocide, literally race murder, genocide. Raphael Lemkin, a Polish Jew who had escaped to America during World War II, coined this term as the Holocaust was taking place in 1943. The Holocaust, the systematic mass murder of 6 million Jews, was unique, and we should not lose sight of this fact. But it also represents the largest case or example of the concept of genocide. Lemkin didn't just give us a new word to describe the horrific breadth of the Holocaust. He gave us a new label for a category of human-created phenomena. Coming out of the ashes of World War II and the Holocaust, the international community, with its newly created United Nations, declared that never again would such mass atrocities be allowed to occur. Such sentiment inspired the 1948 Convention on the Prevention and Punishment of Genocide, to which the United States is a signatory. The United States signed this convention. The Genocide Convention declares that genocide is a crime under international law and says that the United Nations member states who signed the convention are obliged to punish and even to prevent genocide. The 1948 Convention defines genocide as the intent to destroy, in whole or in part, a national, ethnic, racial, or religious group. As a document of international law, it enumerates in detail what types of acts constitute genocide against the targeted group. Killing members of the group, causing serious bodily or mental harm to members of the group, deliberately inflicting on the group conditions of life that are calculated to bring about its physical destruction in whole or in part, imposing measures to prevent births within the group, forcibly transferring children of the group to another group. This highly empirical technical definition enables the international community and scholars to identify cases of genocide, past and present. Most historians agree that the deliberate destruction of Native American tribes in North and South America constituted acts of genocide. The systematic extermination of between 1.5 million and 2 million Cambodians, approximately 20% of the entire country's population, by the Cambodian Pol Pot regime in the 1970s was genocide. The deliberate mass killings of 800,000 Tutsis and moderate Hutus in Rwanda by Hutu extremists and ordinary Hutus in 1993 is the most clear-cut example of modern genocide. The ethnic cleansing massacre of over 8,000 Bosnian Muslim men and boys by Bosnian Serbs in Srebrenica in 1995 would certainly qualify as an act of genocide according to the 1948 Convention. And that particular incident in Srebrenica spurred the United States and NATO to take military action that eventually led to the end of the Bosnian War. The historical explanations and contexts for each of these cases of genocide are unique. They are all examples of genocide, as is the Holocaust, but each one is different. How can we compare them? What can we learn from them as a set of discrete examples within this same broad category of genocide? Through the study and comparison of genocides, we can answer a basic question. What makes it possible for humans to commit mass atrocities against other humans? All genocides require the dehumanization of the other, people that are different from us. Categorizing a particular group of people in the most negative light, describing them using demonizing stereotypes, and defining them as subhuman and thus unworthy of life, and describing them as a threat to your own group's survival and well-being. Genocide requires both hatred and fear, even if one or both of those must be manufactured by leaders manipulating their own people. We've all been told that sticks and stones may break our bones, but words can never hurt us. But the process of dehumanization that, when taken to its ultimate conclusion, can end in genocide, begins with language. Words don't kill, but words can facilitate, make possible killing. The only good Indian is a dead Indian. This is a line that was used in many Hollywood westerns, and it was a line that was popular in 19th century America. This is the language of genocide. Before the Nazis began rounding up the Jews of Germany and sending them to the camps, they bombarded the German people with sophisticated written and visual anti-Semitic propaganda, posters, movies, radio broadcasts that portrayed Jews as vermin, as a human disease, as untrustworthy, and as a threat to traditional German values and culture. Before the genocide began in Rwanda in 1993, Hutu hate radio called the Tutsis Iyenzi, cockroaches. What do you do with a cockroach? In the weeks prior to the killing frenzy that took 800,000 lives in 90 days, Rwanda's RTLM radio station called on all the Hutus to, quote, exterminate the Tutsi from the globe, make them disappear once and for all. Today, Iranian President Mahmoud Ahmadinejad's declaration that Israel, the Jewish state, should be wiped off the map could be interpreted as the language of genocide. So too the charge in school textbooks throughout the Arab world that the Jews are the children of monkeys and pigs. Not all mass killings constitute genocide, and some mass killings can actually be larger in scale than some technical genocides. Genocide, in both its commonly held understanding by people and in the 1948 Genocide Convention, requires the intent to eliminate or liquidate a specific group of people based on their ethnic or religious identity. On the other hand, scholars today call mass killings that are based on the victim's socioeconomic class or ideology, rather than ethnicity, politicides. For decades, the world did nothing in the face of post-Holocaust modern genocides and mass murders. But in recent years, the international community has become less willing to stand still and accept mass murder, politicide, or genocide. We are all shamed by our inaction in Rwanda, whereas we know that military action in Bosnia and Kosovo halted ethnic cleansing and perhaps prevented genocides. The emerging international doctrine called the responsibility to protect, known as R2P, reflects a new understanding that the sovereignty of the nation state does not mean that a government has the right to kill its own people. All sovereign states have a responsibility to protect their own people from extreme abuse, such as ethnic cleansing, crimes against humanity, or genocide. If a government fails to do so, R2P suggests, it abrogates or gives up its sovereign immunity, and the international community has a responsibility to intervene, militarily if necessary. R2P is a new emerging concept. It's controversial, and it has not been accepted as international law, at least not yet. But the rationale of R2P, or the responsibility to protect, clearly undergirded the United Nations and NATO's response to Muammar Gaddafi's violence against his own people in Libya. The fear of mass atrocities in Benghazi, had Gaddafi's forces taken that city, spurred the international community to launch its humanitarian military intervention there. Yet with the Libyan case, we are seeing the practical and political problems of trying to turn never again into a policy dictum. Why Libya, but not Bahrain, or Yemen, or Syria? Which countries are willing to spill their own blood and treasure to stop the killing on the other side of the world, especially if that is not in those countries' direct national interest? How do we determine when a particular mission of humanitarian intervention actually ends? Such questions cannot be answered here today. But there are lessons to be learned from the Holocaust and other cases of genocide. Before there can be killing fields or gas chambers, there must be the dehumanization and demonization of the intended victim group, combined with the idea that the demonized group represents a mortal threat to the good people. This has been the case in all genocides throughout history. In this way, mass murder and even extermination becomes justified to ordinary people, people who otherwise might never think of killing another human being. And it helps to explain how ordinary people could do nothing in the face of evil, or even become active participants in that evil. The study of genocides tells us that words matter, that how we treat and portray our fellow human beings, especially those who are different from us, matters. Genocides are not possible without hate, fear, and the abuse of power. As we remember the Holocaust, that most singular and unique case of man's inhumanity to man, and as we think about the numerous genocides that have followed in its wake, this is one lesson that we can all learn. Thank you.
In the biblical book of Proverbs, it is written, "The human spirit is God's lamp." And so, to remember those who have passed on before us, Jews light candles. As we prepare to light candles in memory of those of our ancestors who died during the Holocaust, the 6 million Jews, we recall the words of poet Hannah Senesh, herself a victim of World War II. She wrote, "Blessed is the match, consumed in kindling flame. Blessed is the flame that softly burns in the heart's secret place. Blessed is the heart that stops beating for honor's sake. Blessed is the match, consumed in kindling flame." Ashrei hagafrur shenisrof vehitzit lehavot. Ashrei halehavot shebara bisitrei levavot. Ashrei
Gafrur Shnisrof Vehitzit Lehavot.
My name is Dee Schwartz. I'm a teacher here at Indianapolis. I'm also a second-generation Holocaust survivor. That means I was actually born in Europe, in Vienna, Austria, in 1938. My parents were very young. I was an infant, and it was during Hitler's entrance into Vienna that they realized they had to get out, and by a series of miracles were able to do that. I'm here to represent the voices of those that cannot really speak for themselves. I will soon be lighting candles in memory of many members of my family and others, only to let you know that even those people who survived, and my parents did survive, they were victims just as well. Though their bodies and their minds seemed to function together, they lived in dread and fear of everything. They appeared to be assimilated into American society, but Hitler broke their spirit. So I'm here to speak for others who went through the same thing. I'm going to light 6 candles. One candle is for my parents, Isidore and Ida Michelle, who were forced out of their home, who were humiliated by the Nazis, who had everything taken from them, only to come to a very foreign country, did not know the language, came with $10, a few possessions, and an 8-month-old baby, and miraculously made a life for themselves. I'm lighting a candle for my grandmother, who, though she did make a journey to America, physically she was present, emotionally she was not. I'm going to light candles for my great-grandmother, who saw her only grandchild and her only great-grandchild off at a train station, knowing that she would never see them again, and that, of course, was extremely traumatizing. Her life ended when she was taken into a forest and shot in the back by the Nazis. I'm lighting a candle for my paternal grandparents, Teresa and Reuben Michelle, whom I never knew, but they knew me. I really did not have grandparents that were alive, but I heard about them in the many stories that were passed on. Both Reuben and Teresa were also murdered by the Nazis. We assume that they were buried in a cemetery in Germany, but we can never be sure. My parents went back to Vienna many times to visit and were pointed to where supposedly they were buried. The Nazis kept incredible records and pointed in the right direction, but we really don't know that. But it did bring some comfort to them. I'm going to light a candle for 1.5 million children who were too young to understand what was happening to them. They didn't know what they had done other than be born a Jew. They were taken to the concentration camps, and as children with wonderful spirits, they drew pictures, they wrote poems, and if you have an opportunity to go to the United States Holocaust Museum, you will see the actual original work of these children. Though they really weren't aware of why they were there, they also knew that they would never see another butterfly. because they knew where their end was going to take place. I'm going to light a candle for a number of non-Jewish people who Hitler and his regime felt weren't worthy of life. They were labeled and murdered. And so now I'm going to light candles in memory of all of these people, and I hope that you will watch and know that behind the number of 6 million Jews, if you start counting with number 1 and you end with number 6 million, that there was a person behind each and every number. It's not a statistics, it is humanity.
Again, we look to the words of the poet Hannah Senesh. There are stars up above, so far away we only see their light, long, long after the star itself is gone. And so it is with people that we loved. Their memories keep shining ever brightly, though their time with us is done. But the stars that light up the darkest night, these are the lights that guide us as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember as we live our days. These are the ways we remember. We remember. יש כוכבים שאורם מגיע ארצה, רק כאשר הם עצמם עבדו ואינם. יש אנשים שזיו זכרם מאיר, כאשר הם עצמם אינם. או בתוכנו אורות אליהם מבחיקים בחשכת הליל,
את הדרך, את הדרך. הם שמורים לאדם את הדרך, את הדרך.
I'd like to start off by thanking Clayton Graham and Jamal Smith. Thank you very much for your cooperation with this event. Thank you to Pierre Atlas for his wonderful comments, to Cantor Roger for her beautiful voice, and to Dee Schwartz for her important and moving words. I'm going to start off by concluding our event with a reading to you a letter that a grandparent of a student was written to the teacher. And the grandparent, well, you'll see from the letter. The grandparent writes, "I'm a survivor of a concentration camp. My eyes saw what no man should witness. Gas chambers built by learned engineers. Children poisoned by educated physicians. Infants killed by trained nurses. Women and babies shot and killed by high school and college graduates. So I am suspicious of education." The grandmother writes, "My request is, help your students become human. Your efforts must never produce learned monsters, skilled psychopaths, or educated Eichmanns. Reading, writing, and arithmetic are important only if they serve to make our children more human. We know that the bedrock of the Holocaust was the long history of anti-Semitism that permeated Europe. We also know that many of the perpetrators were not innate monsters or diabolical creatures. They were ordinary people who did monstrous things. In many respects, it is the behavior of these people, these millions of ordinary people, that constitutes the unfathomable question at the heart of the final solution." And now I'd like to speak to the students, because it wasn't that long ago that I was a student at Carmel High School. I think we may have some students from that school here. And students, this is important, and I know you're tired and you've heard a lot of different people speak, but it's important you take something away today, not just that you've come and visited the Statehouse, and you've seen the pretty ceilings and the pretty walls and the nice chambers that our legislators work in, that you've learned something important that you can take home with and carry with you and educate others about. And I want you to understand the role of the bystander in the Holocaust, because we had the Nazis who were the perpetrators or the bad guys, and we had the Jews and others that were the victims. But it was the bystander that watched the people get victimized and did nothing, where the bystander could have taken action and changed the course of history. And you might say, how does this affect me? This happened long ago. But it happens in your school. It happens with bullying. And what do you do when you see someone being bullied? Do you stand up for somebody? Or do you turn and walk away because you're afraid of what might happen to you? It's important that you understand what you need to do. And by you standing up to that bully, that can change the course of someone's life, of how they feel. It's very important. You have an impact on everybody that you come in contact with. So please, when you leave today, take something home with you. Look out for others. Protect others. And in turn, you'll be doing yourself a great favor. And also today, please go into the South Atrium, look at the photos, and even though you'll see a lot of people being quiet, looking at pictures and reading, don't be afraid to ask questions. Interrupt someone and say, I don't understand this. Explain this to me. Educate yourself. Thank you for coming today.
And that concludes our event for this afternoon. Again, just to reiterate, please visit the South Atrium photos. God bless each and every one of you. Have a great rest of the day. Thank you.
Are not able to afford